Heads up. Tall, dark, and horny at 12 o'clock.
Meh.
Bustin makes me feel good. It makes me feel good.
We said meh. M-E-H. Meh.
I really wanted to like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, but I wasn't prepared for just how crushingly underwhelming it is. Ghostbusters Afterlife got a bit of a mixed response, so for people who didn't like Afterlife, Frozen Empire has just compounded their disappointment. But I actually really liked Afterlife. I loved all the new characters, I loved the way it honored Harold Ramis's legacy, and I loved the way it brought the Ghostbusters story into more emotional territory. So even after the reviews for Frozen Empire came out and it got absolutely slated, I still went in with an open mind and an open heart. And then the movie took a big steaming dump in my open heart. Ghostbusters 2 is really naff, but Frozen Empire just might be the worst Ghostbusters film to date. The pacing is painfully slow, the cast is overstuffed with too many characters to keep track of, the plot is made up of complete nonsense, the nostalgic callbacks feel cheap and unearned, and perhaps Frozen Empire's worst sin is that it's just not that funny. If you're thinking of going out and watching Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, you'll have a lot more fun staying at home and rewatching the original film.
It's right here, Ray. It's looking at me.
He's an ugly little spud, isn't he?
I think he can hear you, Ray.
This video will contain full spoilers for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, but it's not really worth watching, so it's not really worth avoiding spoilers. I've never fallen asleep at the cinema before, but I nearly dozed off a couple of times during Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Granted, on the day I watched it, I'd had to get up a few hours before my usual wake-up time of midday because I was getting the new oven installed, so I was really tired anyway. But if Frozen Empire had done the bare minimum to keep me entertained, I wouldn't have struggled to keep my eyes open. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is horribly paced and structured. It's like it has a 90-minute first act and then crams its second and third acts into the last half an hour. It takes forever to finally get going and set up this huge New York-wide supernatural day after tomorrow disaster, and then it hastily reverses that disaster in a few very underwhelming minutes. When I saw the city freezing over in the opening seconds of the trailer, I thought that would happen really early on in the film, and the rest of it would be an epic adventure across frozen New York, with the Ghostbusters fighting ghosts in icebound Times Square or a frozen over Hudson River. But the city isn't frozen over until well past the halfway point. It's like the time travel in Dial of Destiny. It happens so late in the movie that it's practically an epilogue. And once the city has finally been frozen over and we've seen a bunch of extras reacting to the ice sweeping across the streets, the Ghostbusters are all crammed into the firehouse and stay there for the rest of the film. This movie is called Frozen Empire, but it confines its climactic set piece to one building. It should be called Frozen Firehouse. There's nothing imperial about the contained action here. During its 90-minute first act, Frozen Empire keeps delaying the progression of the main storyline to go off on random tangential subplots that go nowhere. Phoebe befriends a ghost with an ulterior motive, that goes nowhere. There's a running gag of Trevor trying to catch Slimer, that goes nowhere. It has all these ideas and no clue what to do with them. In what initially seems to be an interesting twist that promises some conflict, Walter Peck, now somehow the mayor of New York, shuts down the Ghostbusters, seizes their tech, and condemns their firehouse. But even that has no consequences, because they just get more tech from Winston and go straight back to the condemned firehouse, which is protected by an easily pickable padlock. The police, who are supposed to come and seize the rest of their assets the next morning, just never show up. It's really lazy storytelling, if you can even call it storytelling. And after taking its time getting to the ghost-busting action, the finale is so absurdly rushed, it's such a crushing letdown. The movie spends so much time on exposition dumps building up this new villain, Garraka. There's all these ominous teasers that set him up to be the most powerful villain the Ghostbusters have ever faced. Proton packs are useless against him, he can kill people with the power of fear itself, and he's gonna free every ghost that's ever been busted to run riot on the streets of New York. And then when Garraka eventually shows up, it turns out it actually is pretty easy to defeat him. Phoebe dips her proton pack in smelted brass and Bob's your uncle. Suddenly the proton pack works against Garraka, and he goes back from whence he came about 5 minutes after he first showed up. There's a half-hearted attempt at delivering some kind of message about the power of family as Phoebe's family join her side to help her, but Afterlife already delivered that message much more effectively when Egon's ghost appeared next to Phoebe to help her in that movie's much better finale. Another thing that worked in Afterlife that doesn't work here is the fan service. The fan service in Afterlife felt earned and respectful, but in Frozen Empire it just feels cheap and exploitative. Here, familiar music cues and ghost designs arrive as a frustrating reminder of a much better movie you're not watching. In some cases, the references are actually a detriment to the film itself. There's a chase scene at the library that's actually pretty exciting until a needless throwback to the librarian ghost from the first film stops the sequence dead. I wouldn't mind the plot being nonsensical and the finale being underwhelming if the movie was really funny, but it really isn't. I had maybe 3 or 4 light chuckles the whole movie, and I heard the occasional smattering of subdued laughter from other people in the audience. It takes a special kind of filmmaker to make a movie with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Paul Rudd, Kumail Nanjiani, Patton Oswalt, and James Acaster, and have it be this depressingly unfunny. Bill Murray doesn't do anything the whole movie. He shows up in a couple of scenes, but he doesn't do anything. The movie seems to think just having him on screen is enough. The closest he gets to actually acting is repeatedly throwing pens at Kumail Nanjiani's face, which is initially kind of amusing until it gets run into the ground by repeating the gag over and over again. The bright spot here is McKenna Grace, who continues to delight in the role of Phoebe Spengler. She gets kind of clouded out by an abundance of supporting players, but this is still very much her story. Whereas in Afterlife she was channeling Egon and carrying the Ramis torch, here she gets to come into her own as her young age and recklessness get her fired from the Ghostbusters, and she has to prove she can handle the responsibility of being on the team. Her ghost friend storyline is a bit pointless because it seems out of character for Phoebe to be so naive, and she's not as desperate for companionship as she used to be since she's getting along with Trevor and her pal Podcast is in New York for the summer. But Grace's performance is fun and compelling the whole way. It's just a shame she's surrounded by so much crap. I think the biggest problems in Frozen Empire can be traced back to a change of director. Afterlife was directed by Jason Reitman, the son of original Ghostbusters director Ivan Reitman. You can call him a nepo baby, but he's probably more qualified than anyone to make a Ghostbusters movie. He grew up on the set of Ghostbusters, which gave him a deep understanding of why the movie works and what makes it so special. In a sense, he was the first ever Ghostbusters fan, and he did an amazing job with Afterlife, recapturing the goofy, lovable spirit of the original while also mixing in his own sensibility with the heartfelt feels of Juno and young adult. For Frozen Empire, Reitman handed the reins over to his co-writer Gil Kenan, who just doesn't have Reitman's filmmaking chops. Don't get me wrong, Kenan is an accomplished director in his own right, and he's made some gems like Monster House, but he's also made some stinkers like the Poltergeist remake, and Frozen Empire is much more Poltergeist 2015 than Monster House.
Monster House.
Stupid house.
I went into Ghostbusters Frozen Empire with an open mind and gave it every benefit of the doubt, but I just found it to be one of the biggest disappointments to come along in a while. I'm tempted to call it this year's Flash, but it's not even interesting enough to be this year's Flash. At least the Flash was terrible in a unique way. This is just bland, unadventurous, lukewarm garbage.
I'm gonna have to give it a big 2 thumbs down.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.